Hello and welcome to the Parents Guide. This is where you'll find out what's going on in schools and hear some of the key issues being discussed from the parents' point of view. If you have school-aged children, this programme is for you.
But whilst you're being positive in your management of the children, so you're looking for the good and trying to ignore the negative behaviours that you don't want to encourage, you could also be operating this system of transactional analysis, looking at ego states with some of the more mature pupils, where the children are therefore focusing on how they could have changed their behaviours. So the behaviour has already happened there, it's already been an unwanted behaviour. But here the children are now exploring ways that they might have resolved that situation at the time so that they can take that learning forward to think about, you know, the next set of circumstances that they may be in and how they can put that learning into place. And alongside that, if you're going to have a policy of positive behaviour management, I think it's really important that the children are clear about the expectations.
Denise and Gillian, I mean, we've seen children being involved in the setting of the rules. Do you think that parents ought to be involved?
That was one thing that really struck out to me watching the clips, was that there wasn't really any sign of communication with parents or interaction with parents.
Gillian, did you feel the same?
No, I think that the school and the teachers, that's their environment. I think we should be aware, but I don't think we should necessarily be involved in the decision making for the daily running of the school. There's governing bodies that are represented by parents that make decisions that are probably bigger and more encompassing, but I think on the daily running, I think it becomes far too complicated.
Well, that'll obviously be an ongoing issue, the involvement of parents in a lot of these matters. But in the next programme, we're going to look at two newly qualified teachers who are doing their first jobs in some very challenging circumstances. This extract shows them as they try to work through their problems.
Ishmael, what's going on with your behaviour this week? Oh.
Kept that pretty quiet, didn't you?
A little bit of slippage there. How would you feel if I moved David next to Devante and you beside David on the other side? How'd that work for you? Would that not be good? But the thing is, the reason why I'm thinking that is because you and Devante talk quite a bit. So I'm trying to cut that out. And I know that you don't talk to David. So if I put you over there, does that stop the talking a little bit? And that gives you more points? Yeah?
In the morning, I kind of manage to keep fairly calm and, you know, straightforward. But I think by the afternoon, I'm feeling so frazzled. It's really easy for me to just lose my temper with them, and which is kind of really not what you want to do at school.
Be positive. Always focus on the children who are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And that way you get the class on side. You need to bring the class on side with you. The children who always behave.
And what I need from Mrs. Ishmael is a target that we can set for home as well, because I think Ishmael kind of has the attitude that if he loses his points here, so what? He's got treats at home.
I actually had one child say to me, stop it because Miss is getting stressed.
Never let them see it. You should always be smiling and saying how wonderful some children are and not getting cross. Difficult to do.
Very.
But so much better when you do, for everybody.
You'll be my pencil man as long as you give me a 3. Okay? Okay. Thank you. Nice to see you again. Okay, see you tomorrow morning, Ishmael. Okay, see you soon.
Denise, what did you think of the teachers in that clip?
Well, many things went through my mind when I watched that. First of all, I felt I felt very sorry for the teacher that was struggling. My heart went out to her. But I thought that there was a big difference between the way how she approached her job as a teacher and the way how the other teacher approached the job as a teacher. The attitudes were totally different.
So initially sympathetic, but do you think if your child was in that class and after 3 months she was still unable to control them, you'd feel quite as sympathetic for her plight?
Well, if after 3 months she was still struggling to control, I'd probably be looking at the support system that the school was putting in place rather than her own skills.
Jo, do you think, what would a parent have a right to expect then as support in the first few weeks for a newly qualified teacher?
I think when you first start in your first few weeks of teaching, it's very easy to take a big step back so that you don't quite enter the profession at the level at which you were when you came out of your training. And I think perhaps what those trainees to a certain extent there are trying to juggle all the balls now in one go without the support of the university or the skit or the provider that put them into the profession. And I think sometimes it's easy to lose sight of one of the balls while you're trying to juggle. And one of the things that those trainees in those clips were sometimes not as proactive about was the positive behaviour management that we were talking early on. So it's not unknown for trainees when they first go in to drop one of the balls that they picked up when they were in their training process. You know, a new teacher with a new class always has issues to resolve about behaviour management. Even if the children had a very good structure of behaviour management with their previous class teacher, just a new personality and a new way of working can mean that every teacher at the beginning of a school year has to first of all settle their children down and set their boundaries and get their behaviour management policy working for their classroom and the new environment.
Do you think, would you like to see, Gillian, newly qualified teachers having more training in communicating with parents over issues like behaviour?
I have a lot of experience with the school that I'm involved in, my son's school, and all the new teachers there have always been very proactive and very good. So there obviously is training. I can't believe that just comes from their personality.
Do you think that's an issue, Denise?
Well, when I looked at the clip of the teacher speaking to the parent there, when she got to the point where she said taking away sanctions at home, I kind of cringed. And I thought that, you know, her approach to that, even if it was her objective, I thought that her approach to that could have been a bit, you know, probably different, really more working with the parent to say, what could we do if, you know, if your son or your daughter is not doing what they ought to be doing in school, you know, how can you be involved in supporting them so that they come into school with the right attitude?
So you're not opposed to the idea of the teacher trying to get home and school to work together, but you're more concerned about the way she was able to communicate that with the parent, and how would you think an effective way would be? Maybe to ask the mother first, what?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think that it would be more on the line of a discussion rather than saying, you know, you need to do this, because then obviously you're stepping over, you know, you're stepping into someone else's space. So really for the teacher and the parent to talk through what the options might be and to come up with those solutions together.
Well, I'm sure the issue of how far schools can go in terms of infringing parent space is one we'll hear more about. But our final clip is from a programme about anger management, a critical skill for all staff. Often it falls to teaching assistants to sort out the problem in the heat of the moment. In the programme we see Jackie and Valerie, teaching assistants at Kingswood School in South London, exploring techniques to help pupils manage their anger. They're supported by the learning mentor, Sarah Harris, and in this extract we see Sarah introducing the ideas of dirty and clean anger.
So examples of dirty anger, they might kick the chairs, or they might punch another child, or they might shout at an adult. And that breaks the rules because they're hurting property and they're hurting other people. If we had to come up with some ways that we could be angry, but we were following the anger rules, what kind of things could we do?
Don't fight back.
Okay, what could we do instead of fighting back?
Go to the teacher.
Okay. Clean anger might be going for a big run around the playground at lunchtime, or talking to their friend about it, or 10 deep breaths. So they're things that allow the child to calm down, and they also stick to the anger rules as well. Sometimes it's hard to talk about our feelings, but when we write it down, sometimes we can make a little bit of sense of it, can't we?
Yeah, the last one could be counting to 10.
Counting to 10, fantastic.
This session lends itself well to role play to get children to think about managing their own anger.
Hey, stupid. Hey, fat pig. Hey, fat kid. Get out of my face. Get out of my face.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to choose 2 children to show us what they could have done. Right, Nathaniel and Janelle.
What are you doing? Do I know you? Yes, you do know me. Why was you fighting me last night?
I didn't fight you.
Well, I want to fight.
Well, I don't want to fight.
Yeah, well, I do.
Well, I don't. Excellent. Well done.
Denise, what did you learn from that programme?
Well, the terms dirty and clean anger are terms that I've never heard before, so that was something new to me. But I think that most of all what stood out for me was the fact that there was this teaching the children that anger was okay. It's okay to be angry, but it's just how you express that anger that's the issue. And I think that was a really, really interesting point.
Do you think that explaining that simply to children about understanding the reaction that sometimes happens within their bodies when they get angry is something that's worth schools doing, exploring those ideas?
I do. I mean, these seem to be fairly new ideas that probably aren't developed in a lot of schools, but it certainly seems to be a very good idea, I think, a very positive way of approaching children who obviously have quite, severe anger problems, have quite a problem managing their anger.
Do you think there is such a thing as clean anger and dirty anger? Do you think that's a helpful distinction?
I think the distinction there was helpful. I'm not too sure about the terminology that's used. What I got from that was that the learning mentor was trying to help the children see that there were reactions that they made when they were angry that were inappropriate, sort of violence or aggression or shouting or rudeness. And then there are ways, clean anger, which were about how they could avoid those situations and how they could control that anger by counting to 10, by going to talk to a teacher, by walking away from a situation. So I'm not sure that the term anger describes what actually she was doing with those children, but the process that they were going through I thought was really valid.
One of the things that's very obvious though is that it's quite labour and resource intensive working with children who do have these issues, because you've got a full-time learning mentor dealing maybe with 1 or 2 children. Do you think that's a useful way of using the school's resources?
I think this is where the teaching assistants that we saw at the end of that clip can be very, very useful. And I know that from watching more of that clip, there has been quite a lot of input from the learning mentor with the teaching assistants. So she's explained her processes and her dirty and clean anger and how she works with children. And then the teaching assistants are taking the children and working with groups of children, exploring anger, while the learning mentor is probably back in the classroom teaching the children numeracy or literacy or whatever else is going on that day.
Denise, do you think we listen to children enough in schools?
No, I don't. I think that this is one of the things that this is one of the reasons why I felt quite encouraged by having a look at these clips and seeing some of the involvement of the teachers in this clip. And I think there was one point where a teacher was saying that sometimes we don't listen to children, we just wade into the situation and assume that we know what's going on, and then we make a judgment based on that assumption, and then only afterwards perhaps do you realise that there's a bit more to the story. So no, I don't think that children are listened to enough, and I think that really does have an adverse effect on the children, because we say that if a child is hungry, they can't learn. And if a child is unhappy or they feel that their point of view is being undermined or they're being ignored, I think that would have a similar effect on their self-esteem, and that they might find it difficult to go along with what they ought to, with what the school expects of them.
Well, I think most parents would agree with that comment, but we have to end it there. You can have your say, though, by emailing parents@teachers.tv, and you can find all the information about programmes you have seen and more on our website at Teachers TV. Details at the end of the programme. Thanks to my guests on this programme, Denise, Gillian and Jo.
Goodbye.
And for myself, Fiona Miller, thanks for joining us, and until next time, goodbye.